I found this at Goodwill a couple of months ago, and I'm like, this is the worst shirt ever. So I have to have it.
Mouse, sometimes you ask yourself,
Did
did
I
he shoot
fire?
5 shots or 6? Tell you the truth, Mouse, in all this excitement, I kind of lost track myself. So you really have to ask yourself, do I feel lucky? Well, do you, Mouse?
I'm Paul. That's Steve. This is Check Your Shelf. All right. Well, I know in the last video I told you guys that Steve and I were going to be doing something special, which is why, I did what I did for last week's episode. But we don't get together very often in IRL, so we just decided to hang out. But we did go to Half Price Books, so we're going to do a book haul later on, a couple episodes down the line. But this week, it's about time I started talking about The Zone. This particular issue, this is Zone number 1, Hard Target.
So this is the Zone report, right? So
this is the first episode of the Zone report. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to do this about once a month. It may be like interchanged with the SOBs.
Yeah.
So I might stagger them. Zone this month, SOBs next month, that kind of thing.
The main thing I would say about the Zone is, if you don't already know what it is, just picture if the war in, the Russian invasion of Ukraine were to spread beyond Ukraine, and NATO freaks out, and and maybe somebody freaks out, right? And rather than have their cities overrun by the Russians, they decide to use nukes.
Right. Nukes and any other kind of biological, chemical.
NBC, as the kids used to call it. Nuclear, biological, chemical, whatever else we've invented since then.
Yeah.
And they turn an entire swath of the middle of Europe into, it's Western Europe, Eastern Europe, mainly the middle, like the middle part of Europe is just a radioactive, biological, chemical wasteland.
Yeah,
but the war is still going on.
Yeah, just imagine like World War I, but if you can imagine it, even worse weapons of destruction than what they had at the time for World War I.
World War I without the trenches. Of course, we thought we were done with trenches, and then Ukraine happens. Russia invades Ukraine. Now we're back to trenches. But maybe there are trenches, maybe there aren't. But the war's still going on. But even worse weapons. Yeah. And somehow the world decides they're just going to keep it confined to that area, right? Yeah. And it's called the Zone. Yep. Now, since the war is still going on, you still need special operations, and you still need people willing to go in there and do things to try to turn the tide of the war one way or another. And now this is where you go, well, what if the A-Team were not on primetime TV, but on some X-rated VHS tape that you find in the bottom drawer of your older brother's bedroom or something, right? So it's like, it's A-Team-esque, it's Band of Buddies-esque,
A bit of Kelly's Heroes thrown in there too.
There you go.
Yeah.
In this wasteland called the Zone.
Very good. Did you research, or did you pull that out of your ass?
Pulled that straight out of Dooley's ass.
Speaking of Dooley, well, we'll get to Dooley in a minute.
All right. It was a young Steve Benson growing up in the middle of Springfield Township, and if you've watched our very first videos, you know that I started out reading like books about sports heroes and astronauts, right? Yep. And Ramona the Brave.
Yeah, that's what it was, Ramona the Brave.
Encyclopedia Brown, Choose Your Own Adventure. That's what I was reading, and then I met my friend Paul Schultz, and he's like, I want you to do 2 things. I want you to listen to ZZ Top and read The Zone. and my life would never be the same.
Can confirm. Okay, so having said all that, so basically the Zone is a 9-book, 10-book if you count the ebook that came out in the early 2000s series, written by James Roach, who's still alive, by the way. I looked into it. He's like an author. He runs like an author's management company. He's British, he's a British author. He wrote 9 books beginning in 1980. I read it. I had to do some math after we talked about it, but it was 86 when I started reading these. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Because I remember I was homeless and it was a time in my life when I was homeless, so we didn't have a home. And so the events that I remember surrounding this book is how I remembered it was 1986. Not that anybody cares.
I care.
The first book is called Hard Target. I should point out, I think we talked about this in an earlier episode, but in case this is anybody's first episode, the Zone started out as a future, like almost post-apocalyptic war story. But then this thing happened in early 90s when
the Soviet Union fell apart. Yeah, late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. So then in the early 2000s, when he wrote book 10, it became like alternate future history. And so in order to read this book and not cringe about it, I just took it as, all right, it's an alternate future. It's an alternate future history. All right, well, let's focus on Hard Target.
All right.
Okay, so basically it's an American and British NATO task force that gets put together to do all the dirty jobs that need to be done, and the dirty jobs in the Zone, which are the filthy jobs.
Not the dirty jobs like Mike Rowe would do. We're not cleaning out septic tanks or castrating goats here.
Don't be so quick on that.
Dooley's a man of many talents.
The team gets together. You had to basically take out this like tank repair station that is kind of nestled in amongst this huge refugee camp full of like German refugees and Russian refugees who are all big. You know how refugees camps work, but it's like nestled so close into it that they can't just blow it out of the ground with missiles and whatnot. So they have to send in a task force to take it out.
Can I just point something out?
Sure.
How quaint that is. The James Roach was like, it's in the middle of a refugee camp. You can't just bomb it because you might accidentally kill refugees. I'm like, James Roach was he was a product of his time.
It was a simpler time. It was a simpler time.
Yeah.
Well, the idea being it would panic the Russians, and the Russians would start lobbing nukes everywhere. So they have to infiltrate the refugee camp to gather intel on to figure out exactly how big this repair station is. And along the way, they hook up with some resistance fighters who were East German people who didn't want to goose step right along with the Russians. They get the information they need, and the way they get the information on it is conveniently there's a whorehouse near where the garage is, and so they take it over, and a couple of young Russian officers, wanting to get their bell ropes pulled. I've
never heard it called that.
Come into the whorehouse, and they of course immediately get captured and tortured, and they get the information they need on the size, the lay of the size of the entire operation. Then they invade, and mayhem ensues. It's kind of like when I was reading Sergeant Rock back when I was a kid, because I never really noticed how big Easy Company was until the casualties started mounting up.
Oh, right.
And a lot of people die in this book.
Remind me, it's been 25 years or more since I've read it.
Mm-hmm.
So the task force started out bigger and a bunch of people died on the task
Yeah.
force, or you're saying the task force killed a bunch of people?
Both.
Okay.
Well, the task force killed everybody eventually,
All right.
but at a pretty high cost.
So you've got this
And-
core group
Yeah.
that we get to know and not necessarily love, but you're saying the task force is like a bigger group. and a
Yeah,
bunch
it's like
of them get
imagine
killed.
like Band of Brothers. It's a big company,
Yeah, I got it.
and like they all get introduced really fast, and it's not a character driven, book. It's more of a caricature driven, story. You get introduced to all the major players, and you also know there's other characters in the peripherals. Some of the peripheral characters die. Some of the characters that you didn't think were gonna die horribly, I might add. One of the things I like about this book in this series is just how gritty it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's you need a shower when you're done, because and possibly your wounds bandaged, because
I can't get clean.
It's just so gross and gritty. And then like I had said in the earlier video about just how much sex is in this book. Now when I say sex, I don't mean like the physical act of sex. I mean, there's a lot of sexual innuendos, tension. Well, there's a whorehouse, so there's that. There's the character Andrea, who this is a men's book.
Whereas a romance novel may spend 75 pages on the heroine and the hero getting it on. In this book, they'll spend like a sentence, and then they got it on.
Yes, because when Andrea is introduced, I'll get to the cast of characters here in just a second. But when Andrea gets introduced, all Major Revell can focus on is how all the lines of her soiled, dirty jeans all kind of coalesce into her crotchular area. And it's
Crotchular.
like I said, a lot of people die, but there are some main characters who float through the majority of these books, still with their boots on. But there's the British Sergeant Hyde, who basically imagine Leatherface in a British commando uniform. There's Sergeant Revell, who is he's the American leader of his squad. They collectively, Hyde and Revell have their own squads, and they get put together. And you think it's going to do one of those things where like this side doesn't get along with this side, and something happens and they pull together, and and then they become a team. No, they just all hate each other all the time. So, I mean, Hyde and Revell get along pretty well. The other characters include Clarence the Sniper, who's my absolute favorite. Clarence is racking up a body count of Russian bodies because his family was wiped out by the Russians. So he's on a mission. The butt of his sniper rifle is just covered in notches. You get the aforementioned Dooley, who's on the American side. I thought he was funny, but he's an asshole. He's just a big, dumb American asshole.
Well, I think that really is, we were teenagers, right?
Yeah. And
teenagers are socialized kind of to think that way, like to look up to and think, oh, that's hilarious, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then when you mature and you get a little wisdom on you, you realize, no, that's not cool. That's not funny. That's just being an asshole, right? Yeah. And a lot of relevance to our times now, right? A lot of internet influencers make a lot of money by being Dooley and being hilarious to 16 to 18-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And those 16 to 18-year-old kids are starting to grow up a little bit, I think, but I don't know if they're growing up enough, because by the time they get to be early 20s, then the politicians pick them up and go, oh, there's votes, let's still play into that stuff, right? But
maybe he was onto something.
Yeah. Well, like that Andrew Tate guy is, part British, hung out in Romania for a while because he's got, his fan base is global. So it's not a uniquely American thing. That's why fascism is on the march throughout the world. So
got doxxed by a 14-year-old.
Yeah, right.
Which brings us to Andrea. Now the funny thing about Andrea is Andrea is a product over time. Because every guy in the unit, because she ends up joining the unit after her fellow compatriots are all killed on this mission. She ends up joining the group, and every guy in the group wants to bang her. But she prefers the company of women. Not because that's how people just are, but obviously something had to happen to her to get that to happen. She was abused by the Russians. We'll just leave it at that. But Andrea is this great character because she's mean as a snake. I mean, I don't know why any guy wants to chase her around, but she just spits up. I get it now.
that was again a kind of a trope of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in Red Dawn, you know, there were a couple of girls who were abused by the invaders, who then you didn't want to mess with, right? You shouldn't anyway. You shouldn't mess with women, guys. Listen.
Yeah, I can't believe we have to tell you this, but
consent is imperative and absolutely mandatory. But you mess with somebody like Andrea, you're gonna pull back a nub.
If you pull back anything.
It was funny. She was East German, right? And I remember Katharina Witt was popular back. Well, you know, she was winning gold medals in figure skating. So I always just, when I would read The Zone, I would just picture Katharina Witt, who was a East German.
Yeah, and you know what the funny thing about picturing her is I remembered her as a redhead.
Oh.
But she has real short bob black hair. And I'm like, was I confusing her with Mac Bolan's girlfriend? Now, the last character I want to talk about in this book is, let's see if I can get a good enough picture of the Iron Cow itself.
Iron Cow? I forgot about the Iron Cow.
Yeah, the Iron Cow is this kick-ass hovercraft that constantly gets the shit shot out of it. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this, man. I know I'm doing a bang-up job just talking about it. But if you're looking for a quick read, because Lord, this thing's only like 200 pages. If you're looking for a quick read, if you're 219 pages, if you like trench warfare, if you like toilet humor, if you like man-centric, grimy stories, I highly recommend tracking these down. You can find the entire series here and there on eBay for about what you'd imagine you'd pay for it. It's not unreasonable.
Did we look for any of those when we were at Half Price Books? I don't remember.
I look for them everywhere I go. Yes. So the short answer is yes.
Half Price Books, I know this isn't that, but it's hard to, because I thought about it for a second. I was like, oh, look in the R's, alphabetical by author. And then I'm like, no, this would be over here. No, wait, it might be over here. And then I realized everything's everywhere in there.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you have to be ready to browse for a while.
It's a little bit better of an experience than, like, say when you go to a convention and you hit like the bargain bins, and the people running it just have these long boxes just full of random shit. There's no alphabetizing, no publisher organization, no nothing.
Yeah.
The idea being you're looking for something, but you find this too.
Yeah.
Half Price Books is kind of like that, but a little better organized. And the thing I noticed was, when I was walking through, there's a couple key authors that I look for everywhere I go. I went down the one aisle looking for Robert E. Howard stuff. Nothing. So I walked away, I went over here and did something over here, and I came back around and I went down that aisle and I found some. I'm like, how fast do they put stuff on these shelves? Because there's always people running around putting stuff on the shelves. I'm like, so it's one of those stores you can't just walk into and walk out of. You got to walk around several times, which we did.
You guys know the formula, and they're good because it's the kind of book that when you get number 2 or you get number 3 or you get number 4, you've already made a deal with James Roche. Like, you're going to give me an impossible mission. You're going to give me some people might die. You're going to give me a bunch of jokes that Dooley makes.
Yep.
And you're going to give me this inter service rivalry stuff. I'm going to get all that, and I want that. I don't want you to surprise me. I don't want you to like try to get too artsy or whatever. And so as I remember the series, that's what you expect is what you get.
Yeah. It doesn't, if that's your thing, you're not disappointed by this.
Yes. And you're never bored.
I've read a lot of post-apocalyptic, war stories and series that I couldn't even finish. Like some books, some series I didn't even get it through the first one. Some books I read one or two, like The Guardians, for instance. Our mutual friend loved it. I read it. I mean, this is the biggest pile of like Reagan yeehaw bullshit. So basically, imagine like The Day After, but with the A-Team rolling across America, squashing out dirty hippies and that kind of shit. It was dirty awful. But you won't get that with The Zone. The only problem I have with the writing, it's like I said, it's really dirty. You'll love it if you like grit. But the only problem I have with this series, and maybe it gets better, is being British. James Roche cannot write American dialogue. Like, what confused me at first was I thought I remembered I couldn't remember whether Dooley was American or British, and I'm reading his dialogue and I'm like, no American says, "All right, you lot." Nobody goes, "Come on, lads." It's like, dude, maybe watch a movie before you start writing American dialogue.
Bullocks.
But yes, other than an arse, he says arse a lot. I'm like, all right, maybe hanging around the Brits, he picks it up, but maybe give some kind of clue that that's what's happening, But no, he just from the get-go, he's talking like a Brit, and it's like, but that's a very small nitpick for an otherwise excellent series.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Zone number 1, Hard Target.
Out of 4 and 3 and 2 and 1.
Solid 4.
Got it.
Solid 4.
Been too long for me to really rate it, so it's got to be close to 4.
Yeah.
Considering that.
I would recommend reading it if you get a chance.
Yeah.
All right, well, that'll close the cover on this episode for Sergeant Hyde, Major Revell, Andrea, Dooley's potty mouth. I'm Paul.
I'm Steve.
And the next time you're looking for something to read,
check your shelf.